I will tell you that when a country can come interfere in another country's elections, that is warfare.
9 months into his term, Donald Trump still refuses to acknowledge Russia's interference in the election that made him president. In fact, he'd still rather tweet conspiracy suggesting that if Russia did intervene, they somehow were in league with the party that lost. Yesterday, he tweeted, quote, "Workers of firm involved in the discredited and fake dossier, take the fifth. Who paid for it? Russia, the FBI, or Dems, or all?" Clearly, this is a president who sees no shortage of enemies at every turn. Richard Painter, the chief White House ethics lawyer under George W. Bush, had an answer for Donald Trump, tweeting, quote, "Conspiracy between Russia, the FBI, and the Democrats? The response to this is clear. Amendment 25. The 25th Amendment sets out how a president who has become incapacitated, physically or otherwise, can be removed. In a piece for NBC, Painter notes that certain behaviors could actually, quote, undermine a president's ability to lead. He adds, though remote, we cannot rule out the possibility that a president in a downward mental health spiral could destroy important global partnerships, alter centuries-old alliances, and leave the United States vulnerable to terror attacks or war. All of which leads Painter to ask an inevitable question. Is America today in need of such an unprecedented intervention? Richard Painter joins me now. And Richard, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Make your case that it is appropriate to consider the 25th Amendment when Donald Trump is clearly not physically incapacitated, that we know of, and that there is no way to diagnose whether he is mentally incapacitated because no psychiatrist has treated him.
Well, I have been concerned about President Trump's psychological health for months now, and that's why I collaborated in this article with Dr. Leanne Watt, a trained clinical psychologist, very experienced clinical psychologist. And we looked at this quite closely, and she's had a lot of experience dealing with a range of different disorders in her practice. And there are two in that we're very concerned about. One is extreme narcissism or self-centeredness, and we certainly see that with this president. The only properties he visits are Trump properties with his name on them, spending many of his working days at Trump properties. He's very focused on himself and the election he won against Hillary Clinton and his own ego, the appointment of family members to the staff. The self-centeredness goes on and on with this president. The other disorder that we're very worried about is an extreme antisocial tendency, an inability to understand how other people feel. We saw that last week in his dealings with the families of fallen soldiers. We saw that over the summer after Charlottesville, when you have racists running up and down the streets, chanting death to the Jews, and carrying swastikas and Confederate flags. That is a time for a president to understand how people feel about that. And instead he comes out and says, well, there are good people on both sides. That's not a human response. It's not a rational response. It's not a response to that from someone who is psychologically balanced. And now we've just seen that the Twitter machine is out of control. And just this week, the idea that the FBI is collaborating with the Russians and the Democrats, it's just patently absurd. And I think that someone who tweets that way, who thinks that way, talks that way, is in control of nuclear weapons that could wipe out human civilization. This is very, very worrisome. And that's why we have the 25th Amendment.
Sure. Well, what do you say, Richard Painter, to those who would say, you know, you're known to be an opponent of Donald Trump, you're a never-Trumper, if you will, and that the things you just described are really just things you don't like about Donald Trump's style, but that you're not a doctor and you can't apply the 25th Amendment when you're not a clinician. You just don't like him and you don't like his style. That's not enough.
I've been a Republican for 30 years. I wanted to support a Republican in 2016. And yes, going into this election, I felt that he was psychologically imbalanced. Anyone who would say that a judge should be thrown off a case because he's a Mexican-American, or say that Muslims should be banned from the United States, I mean, the statements he made there in the campaign were psychologically imbalanced. And if we have to wait around for a doctor to implement the 25th Amendment of the Constitution, it could be too late. And that's why we have the 25th Amendment. It was adopted in the 1960s in the nuclear age. When we understood the dangers and indeed to human civilization if we had a president who's off his rocker. And this is a very dangerous situation we confront right now. And I'm fine with him on Twitter, but we got to take away the football.
Richard Painter making your case. Thank you.
Yesterday, John Kelly went to the briefing room to defend Donald Trump. Today, Sarah Huckabee Sanders had to go to the briefing room to defend John Kelly, and as one journalist summed it up tonight, quote, "It was a spectacularly shambolic week for the White House, and Trump has no regrets about any of it."
Watching a grieving military family become a political football, pretty disgusting.
If you want to get into a debate with a four-star Marine general, I think that that's something highly inappropriate.
If you're the chief of staff of the White House and you say something that's wrong, we are going to call you out on it, and we are going to look into it, and we are going to investigate it, and you are responsible for what you say.
I'll put it a little more simply, as we say in the South, all hat, no cattle.
Now, I'm not familiar with that expression, but I know this one: when you're in a hole, stop digging.
I think he's, along with many other people who come into contact with Trump, is lesser at the end of this week than he was at the beginning.
An overnight victory for President Trump. Senate Republicans finally passing a budget in a close 51-49 vote.
Instead of celebrating that victory, he's in this hopeless, revolting back and forth with the family of a slain serviceman, and it's awful.
The Trump White House has a problem with the truth. General John Kelly said he was going to fix it. He would improve the information flow. But tonight we know it's information, current events, recent history, and lies that are haunting the White House. What began with President Trump misrepresenting other presidents' interactions with Gold Star families and escalated in a fight over what Trump said in a, quote, condolence call to the widow of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, killed in Niger with 3 other staff sergeants, has now turned into something much, much more problematic. Donald Trump allegedly told Myesha Johnson he knew what he was signing up for, but I guess it hurts anyway. That, according to Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. And the president denied he said that.
Mr. President, what did you say to Sergeant Johnson's widow on the phone yesterday?
Didn't say what that Congresswoman said. Didn't say it at all. She knows it, and she now is not saying it.
Didn't say it at all. Okay, that's a denial defense. But then General John Kelly stirred up more controversy with something else. A justification defense, suggesting Donald Trump did say it, and it's okay.
He was doing exactly what he wanted to do when he was killed. He knew what he was getting into by joining that 1%. That's what the president tried to say to 4 families the other day.
And the point isn't really the exact word choice, although it doesn't help that Trump denied the words that Kelly then seemed to confirm. The point is, Kelly contradicted Trump and then attacked the Congresswoman who shared this story. This is not the president's political spokesman or a campaign strategist. This is the taxpayer-funded chief of staff launching this allegation against a sitting Congresswoman.
The Congresswoman stood up, and in the long tradition of empty barrels making the most noise, stood up there and all of that, and talked about how she was instrumental in getting the funding for that building, and how she took care of her constituents because she got the money, and she just called up President Obama, and on that phone call, he gave the money, the $20 million to build the building. And she sat down, and we were stunned.
She got the money. She stood up, she talked about the money, herself, Obama, and then she sat down. and he was stunned. Well, that allegation today was demolished. A fact check reviewed Representative Wilson's entire speech and determined Kelly got it wrong. Tonight, MSNBC's Joy Reid aired the entire speech so everyone could see all the facts and the entire address themselves. We've reviewed it here as well. The video shows Wilson spending most of her time praising FBI agents who were killed on duty and crediting Republican Speaker Boehner by name for their teamwork in a vote on legislation, not money, for naming an FBI building after 2 agents.
I went to the Speaker, Speaker Boehner, and I said, Mr. Speaker, I need your help. The FBI needs your help, and our country needs your help, and we have no time to waste. He went into attack mode, and in 2 days, pulled it out of committee, brought it to the floor for a vote.
Now, let me be as fair and precise as possible. It could be that John Kelly innocently misremembered this. And today's tension could have been tapped down with any kind of acknowledgement of what the video shows. If you had a court case that was built on this allegation against Representative Wilson and this video emerged, that case would just get tossed out of court. But instead, today, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who reports to General Kelly, says her boss stood by it.
Does General Kelly still stand by the statement that he made yesterday that he felt that she was grandstanding and that she was taking credit?
Absolutely. General Kelly said he was stunned that Representative Wilson made comments at a building dedication honoring slain FBI agents about her own actions in Congress.
Faced with the fact check and the video, Kelly has an employee claiming he was stunned by Representative Wilson working with Republicans on legislation. And I can tell you Trump aides now say maybe she made other comments at some other time at the event that just isn't on video. And then Sanders today went further.
If you want to go after General Kelly, that's up to you. But I think that if you want to get into a debate with a 4-star Marine general, I think that's something highly inappropriate.
This is not another squabble born of Donald Trump's neediness. It now includes a general dispatching a federal employee to tell the nation he's not subject to debate. This cannot be said enough. General Kelly, you will be debated. You will be questioned. The oath you take to uphold the Constitution, that document places the military, which we respect, under civilian control, not above it. And that's relevant not only to this bitter fact-challenge dispute. It's relevant tonight to the incident that got reporters pressing the White House in the first place, the death of 4 U.S. soldiers in Niger. We have no idea if findings in the future will show things should have been done differently or not. It's obviously too early to say. And there are also new reports that after this bruising week, Trump shows tonight, quote, zero remorse even for dragging Chief of Staff Kelly into the mess, while Kelly was looking more and more, quote, dispirited as the week went on. And then after business closed at the White House tonight, I can tell you Sarah Huckabee Sanders put out an additional statement, and I'll read it to you. It says, quote, of course everyone can be questioned, but after witnessing General Kelly's heartfelt and somber account, we should all be able to agree that impugning his credibility on how best to honor fallen heroes is not appropriate. There you have it. Another effort to move the goalposts. Journalists find a video contradicting Kelly's attack on a member of Congress, and then they respond with this. Of course, the factual dispute's not about those fallen heroes in this particular moment. And by the way, this is a free country. So if people did want to debate that, as Sarah Huckabee Sanders refers to, they could debate that too, whether you're in or out of uniform. Many in Washington had hoped that when John Kelly came to the White House, he could change Trump. Tonight, it looks like Trump may be changing him.